Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to explore how a single ancient city completely shaped the modern Western world through a relentless cycle of destruction and reinvention. We're talking about a place that's so deeply woven into our modern fabric that even its ruins have ruins. Let's get started. Okay, to really grasp this, we have to understand the sheer, unprecedented scale of Rome. At its absolute peak, this city was home to over 1 million people. To put that into perspective, in a world where most cities struggle to house even 20,000, Rome was a massive metropolis. It gave us civil law, the concrete arch, and literally had running water in apartment blocks 2,000 years ago. But the craziest part? Rome was never really supposed to survive. It was almost wiped out in its infancy, barely survived brutal civil wars, and constantly had to reinvent itself just to stay alive. So we're going to condense over 2.5 millennia of history into a structured journey today. Here's our roadmap. 1. The Republic is born. 2. The rise of the empire. 3. The 5 good emperors. 4. The fall and splintering. 5. The Renaissance and reinvention. And finally, 6. Rome in the modern world. Let's dive right into part 1. The Republic is born. We're starting way back in 509 BC, when the Roman nobility finally snaps, throws out their cruel Etruscan kings, and establishes a system where power is actually shared. But right out of the gate, this new republic was incredibly unequal, and that sparked a 2-century political conflict we call the struggle of the orders. Basically, on one side, you have the patricians, the wealthy nobles who firmly controlled the laws and priesthoods. And on the other, you've got the plebeians, the ordinary farmers and craftsmen who were actually out there building the city and fighting its wars. And the plebeians were entirely done putting up with this imbalance. What followed was a massive institutional shift. In 494 BC, the plebeians literally staged the world's first general strike. They just refused to fight or work until they secured a vital new political office, the tribune of the plebs. This was revolutionary. Because this elected tribune was legally immune from physical harm, they could provide a genuine check on patrician power. It embedded this absolutely crucial idea into Roman society, that power could be challenged through legal institutions, not just through violence. Moving on to Section 2, the rise of the empire. Rome systematically starts absorbing its neighbors on the Italian peninsula, but it very quickly runs into its greatest existential threat from across the Mediterranean, Carthage. Over a century of brutal warfare, Rome showcased an unbelievable level of resilience to become the unrivaled power of the ancient world. Tracing this timeline, the escalation is just staggering. They start out fighting over Sicily in 264 BC. Then they're facing the audacious Carthaginian general Hannibal, who marches his entire army and war elephants right over the Alps. It finally culminates in 146 BC when Rome utterly destroys and burns Carthage to the ground. To really understand the high stakes of this conflict, just look at the Battle of Cannae in 216 BC. Hannibal completely encircled and wiped out a massive Roman force. We're talking 50 to 70,000 Romans killed in a single afternoon. The shock was total. But Rome, they didn't negotiate. They just raised new armies, adopted their tactics, and kept fighting. But here's the catch. All that enormous wealth and military power from these victories eventually corrupted the Republic. Returning soldiers lost their farms to wealthy aristocrats, which led to rampant political violence in the streets. And that perfectly set the stage for brilliant, calculating generals to just take over. When Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon River in 49 BC with his army, which was a direct act of treason against the state, he famously said, "The die is cast." His actions sparked massive civil wars and, for all intents and purposes, ended the Republic forever. Which brings us to Section 3. The 5 good emperors. After the chaos of Caesar's assassination and his heir Augustus transforming Rome from a city of brick to a city of marble, we enter the 2nd century AD. This is widely considered the absolute high point of Roman civilization. So what made this era so golden? It functioned as a true meritocracy. For decades, each emperor adopted a highly capable successor rather than just passing power to their own biological kids. And the results speak for themselves. You had Trajan, who expanded the empire to its absolute peak of 5 million square kilometers. Then, Hadrian consolidates those gains, building massive permanent borders like Hadrian's Wall, and rebuilding the breathtaking Pantheon. And finally, Marcus Aurelius ruled thoughtfully, actually writing his famous Stoic journal, Meditations, while out defending the empire's frontiers. But then we hit the fatal mistake.
Marcus Aurelius decides to name his highly unstable biological son, Commodus, as his successor. This one decision shattered the established pattern. Commodus was deeply erratic. He even went so far as to rename Rome after himself. When he was finally assassinated in 192 AD, it plunged the empire right back into chaos, totally ending that golden era of peace and stability. Now for Section 4, the fall and splintering. That single chaotic succession spiraled into an unraveling that nearly erased Rome from the map entirely. During the crisis of the 3rd century, Rome was hit by a catastrophic perfect storm. Politically, they cycled through over 20 different emperors in just 50 years. It was a revolving door of assassinations. Meanwhile, the plague of Cyprian was reportedly killing 5,000 people a day in the city. The economy completely collapsed. Trade routes fell apart, and Germanic tribes were continuously raiding across the borders. It was apocalyptic. Enter the Emperor Diocletian. He realized that the empire was simply way too massive for one person to manage. So he pulled Rome back from the brink through sheer, ruthless organization. He introduced the tetrarchy, or the rule of 4. It was a very honest admission of the empire's unwieldy size, and it did temporarily stabilize things. But the catch was that this stabilization required officially splitting the empire into an eastern and western half. For the western half, though, they were essentially living on borrowed time. It was eventually overwhelmed by a wave of migrating peoples pushed westward by the Huns. And, looking at how this plays out, it's actually a really quiet, undramatic collapse. The center of gravity just shifts away. Constantine adopts Christianity and moves the capital east to Constantinople. By the time the Visigoths sack Rome and Odoacer quietly deposes the last Western emperor in 476 AD, there's no single catastrophic day of doom. It's just a slow, painful unraveling. The before and after contrast here is staggering. That grand capital that once boasted 1 million citizens, it was reduced to a medieval population of roughly 20,000 people. Its great public buildings fell apart, the marble was stripped off the Colosseum, and the magnificent Roman Forum filled with centuries of dirt and debris until it was literally buried and being used as a cowfield. But we move to part 5, the Renaissance and reinvention. Because Rome doesn't just disappear. The Catholic Church steps in to fill that massive political vacuum. And by the 15th century, the city begins a spectacular reinvention built directly on top of its own ancient ruins. Flush with unprecedented wealth, popes transformed Rome back into the cultural capital of the Western world. You've got Michelangelo painting the breathtaking ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. You have Bernini completely reshaping the city layout with St. Peter's Square and the beautiful Fountain of the Four Rivers. And amazingly, the Trevi Fountain, designed much later by Salvi, is actually fed by an original, functioning 2,000-year-old ancient Roman aqueduct. They were literally layering brilliant new art over ancient foundations. Have you ever wondered why banks, universities, and government buildings across Britain, France, and America look like Roman temples? It's because of the Grand Tour. Wealthy, young European aristocrats would visit Rome to get cultured. They'd sketch the Colosseum and the ruins and bring that grand visual language back home with them. During this time, Rome stopped being just a physical city. It became a global idea. Finally, Section 6, Rome in the modern world. We arrive at the modern era, where the ancient city is forced to adapt yet again, this time to the realities of a unified Italy and the traumatic events of the 20th century. Rome is constantly finding a new identity. It survives dictators like Mussolini, who literally tore wide boulevards right through ancient and medieval districts just to use history as an intimidating theatrical backdrop for his fascist propaganda. But then, following the liberation of Rome in World War II, it reinvents itself yet again. It leverages infrastructure like Cinecittà Studios to emerge as the glamorous creative heart of post-war cinema. Films like La Dolce Vita helped fuel a massive economic and cultural miracle. Today, Rome is a thriving metropolis of nearly 3 million people, but it constantly grapples with the logistical nightmare of functioning as a modern capital while sitting on top of an endless archaeological dig. On one hand, it has unmatched archaeological assets, over 900 churches, and huge global reach via the Vatican. But on the other hand, its subway system is stuck at just 2 lines, because every time they try to dig a new tunnel, they hit an ancient ruin. It also relies heavily on this rich past for tourism, which unfortunately is driving up rents and pushing the younger generations out. So as we wrap up this explainer, we are left to ponder this really fascinating central paradox. How exactly does a city move forward when it is also, at every single turn, a living museum?
a city built on brutal conquest that somehow also birthed the legal frameworks we still use today. Rome is the ultimate survivor, continuously layering the new right over the old. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack the incredible resilience of Rome. Think about how this layered history shapes our world today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.